Hello, once again, and welcome back to the Drone Bay podcast. I am one of your hosts, Crovan, joined as always by my in game court mate and real life brother, Tharus Mar. Tharus, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. It's a bit of a rainy, chilly morning here in Alaska as I record this. This is uh, Sunday, May 19th, at least US time. I think it's still Sunday Eve time as we record this. But if you're new to the show, what we do is we talk about anything and everything related to Eve Online, what we've been up to, what's caught our eye over the course of the last week, and we invite you to share your thoughts down in the comments section below. So, to get us started, let's go over what we've been doing. So, Theris, what have you been up to this week?
So this week I had some time to get some more insurgency plexes and stuff in. I basically already got as much LP as I got in the last insurgency, and we still have a bit to go. So that's exciting. I have some loyalty points in ISK in my future. And other than that, I've been editing videos. We had one go live on Friday. It was a minute-long video and took 5 times longer to edit than my 30-minute video. So
Yeah,
we're
it's funny
learning.
how that works, isn't it? Making shorter content, I find, is often a lot more difficult than the long
Yes.
form stuff. So, yeah, on my end, I've done a little bit of insurgency, not nearly as much as last time around. There's a variety of reasons for that. I've been sort of resetting some of my PI in the reef in order to help with the project of locally manufacturing fuel blocks for the various structures and things we have going. We actually have a market hub up in the Fortizar now in the reef,
It's
which is,
exciting.
yes, extremely exciting. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of that. And the other thing, I did manage to do some PvP flying with Noir though this week. We did a recruitment roam with someone who has been around in the game almost as long as you and I, and has similarly taken a long break and come back. And that was a lot of fun. I got to brush up on some skills that evidently I'm very rusty on. We were doing a little nano roam with some Omen navies and a saber, and I was the saber pilot, which meant I was also the scout and the tackler, and it went reasonably well. We did catch a skiff. I should have caught an Ishtar, but I was a little bit my hotkey foo was not on point that day. So
Gotta get that muscle memory back.
absolutely, that's a huge part of it. I also, since I'm now using a new computer to play, I had to go through on all of my accounts and unbork the overview and the various other settings as well. So, yeah, I've been doing some content and some editing as well. I think, yeah, the Overlord video, Operation Overlord video, came out after we recorded last time.
I believe so.
I'd already been there, but I had not made the video yet. So yeah, that video was rather successful. You should check that out. It was a real feel good community moment for me. And yes, as some of the comments pointed out, I do realize that it was a really kind of minor symbolic gesture in an internet spaceship game. But you know what? So what?
Yeah.
So the new project I'm working on, we'll get to a little bit later, actually, even though the first video is up. So let's get on to the news. And I'm going to switch up the order that we have them on the notes here, Theris, but talking about the end of the Wormhole War. Over almost as quickly as it started, the war between Laserhawks and the Cindy sort of coalition that they'd built up, it's pretty much done and dusted at this point. It followed a major strategic loss, or a strategic victory, I suppose I should say, on behalf of Laserhawks. They went into the Cindy staging system and really wreaked some havoc, caused a lot of damage. And I think whenever you have a loss like that, it also causes a huge amount of morale damage.
Yeah.
Having been involved in large scale wars in Eve, the morale is often way more important than the actual supply of ISK, especially when you're dealing with situations like wormhole space and nullsec, where getting resources and getting ISK and that sort of thing is pretty easy to do. But what's not always easy to maintain is the will to fight, and it looks like that's what ran out on behalf of the Cindy coalition. So yet to be seen what exactly that fallout's going to be, but it looks like Laserhawks is going to maintain their grip on a huge chunk of C5 and C6 space, which is, of course, some of the most lucrative space to live in the entirety of EVE Online.
Yeah, it's hard to get into, and there's reasons people want it. So I'm sure this is not the first and last Wormhole War in our lifetime here.
No, there have been some notable evictions, large-scale evictions in the past, but yeah, I'm sure things will get spicy again at some point. Noir into it. We didn't get contracted into it on either side, um, and yeah, so we missed out on that one. But like you said, there's always more wars to be done. Noir is currently still off contract. Everybody's using Insurgency to kind of rebuild their wallets a little bit. And I guess I should mention as well, if you're unfamiliar, Noir is the corporation that we're both members of. And we are a mercenary corporation that's been around in the game for a very long time now. Our CEO, Alexei Evkard, has the longest running EVE podcast, Declarations of War. I was a guest on that last week. I guess that's also what I've been up to. But I think I talked about being on it, but that episode is dropped now. So you can go to the Declarations of War podcast and hear me talk a little bit about my old man EVE boomer stories. So now let's move on to upcoming news, and that is that we've gotten more dev blogs and more streams regarding the Equinox expansion. The Equinox expansion that will be coming right next to the summer solstice, of course, because why not?
I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, that occurred to me the other day. I was like, wait a minute, it's like 10 days before the solstice, and yet it's Equinox. It's obviously, it's got a more symbolic meaning, but
Sure.
because if you have you watched any of the lore videos surrounding Upwell and any of that?
Yeah, the corporate dystopic utopia videos.
Yeah, isn't it though?
Yeah, those are pretty good.
It is yeah, it is pretty sinister, man. Like, oh, corporate slavery? It's like, wait a minute, I think I've read this book. Have you ever read The Old Man's War?
No.
It's a similar premise where they'll like take people who are, physically frail, old, that sort of thing. You in fact have to be over a certain age, I think, and they'll basically resculpt your body into being youthful and vital again. But in return, you basically have to serve as part of this colonial fleet sort of thing, and you can never come back home, but you get a second life essentially. And this reminds me a lot of The Old Man's War.
Let's check that out. That sounds cool.
It is. The audiobook's good too. So, well, lore aside, that a lot of other channels cover that, and maybe we will in the future. But a lot of real in-game impacts, and we talked a fair bit last week about the sky hooks and the automated moon drills and that sort of thing. But what we got details about this week was the new haulers, and oh boy, do people have opinions.
Just a couple of opinions, yeah.
So I guess just to get us started, do you want to run us through what we're looking at as in terms of the haulers, just what they are?
Yeah, so we kind of have one for each already existing niche of haulers, but they're obviously more specialized towards the planetary materials and that kind of stuff they're carrying. But what I think is most exciting or traumatizing for a lot of people is the fact that they have guns. They have some number of launcher slots. And I guess the intent there is that you are not stuck in the water if you get tackled by a gank. But EVE players being EVE players, put guns on a cargo ship and they're going to go wild with it. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy setup. So I'm looking forward to see what actually comes of it. But yeah, for the most part, they're just regular haulers with guns and specialized cargoes. Yeah, and that's my limited extent. I'm sure much more educated people will tell me where I'm wrong, but that's as someone who's not much into hauling, that's what I've grasped from it, is that they're haulers with guns and the end of the world was happening.
Right. Well, I mean, you're not far off. I mean, that is a very good kind of synopsis, I think. So the three different haulers, one is the Tech 1 hauler, one's the blockade runner, and one's the deep space transport. They, as you mentioned, they've all got specialized holds, which if you're familiar with some of the existing Tech 1 haulers, even some of those have specialized holds. The Epithal comes to mind, and that is probably going to be made fairly obsolete by these, at least as far as I'm concerned. I'm getting a squall for all my PI tunes, and Well, at least the ones that actually have missile skills. A lot of them are pretty bare bones, but the ones that have missile skills, I'm getting a little bit beefier ship for them. And yeah, they've got pretty heavily bonused missiles. So just looking at the Squall, which is the Tech 1, it's got a 20% bonus to missile damage per Upwell Hauler skill level, and a 10% bonus to infrastructure hold capacity. And I'm looking here, we got some screenshots I'm looking at, and I don't see the infrastructure hold capacity for the Squall. I see it for the other two, but not for the Squall. But at any rate...
the Squall does have it. 10% bonus to ship infrastructure hold capacity per skill level.
Right, but I'm looking at the information side, and I don't see what that base number is. Oh, no, there it is. Oh, yeah, no, I do see it. And I assume this is at level 5, 67,500 cubic meters. So it's similar to the Epithal, really. And of course, the infrastructure hold can hold a lot of things. It can hold a lot of the new reagents, or all of the new reagents that are going to be coming out of Sovereign Nullsec. It can hold structures and structure rigs and bits and all that. But most relevant for my purposes, it can hold PI stuff. So, and I'm looking here to see if they've got... This screenshot is a little bit fuzzy, but we were told during the stream that essentially the Squall is going to cost a bit more than a Tech 1 cruiser hull, and will have about the damage of a Caracol. Now, it doesn't have any range bonuses or anything like that, but yeah, you throw some rapid lights on there, and an interceptor or tackle frigate or destroyer is going to have a bad day.
Right, exactly.
So there's that one. And then we have the Deluge, which might be the one as a wormhole. At least my alts are all wormhole residents, and I'm at least a part-time wormhole resident. The Deluge might be the one I'm most excited about because it is the blockade runner. So it's got a little bit smaller hold than your standard blockade runner from what I can see here, but it's got a 45,000 cubic meter infrastructure hold. So hauling that PI to Empire is going to get a lot easier and a lot faster given the existing bonuses that blockade runners have. And I'm looking here, its missile damage is a little bit less than the Squall, but then again, that's not necessarily what you're flying this ship for. It's a blockade runner. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, that's cool. And I don't know like what the M3 is on some of the more important structures that people can carry on. Obviously, we're focused on PI, but I don't know what the implications of being able to carry bigger structures around inside a DST are. That could be cool.
Yeah, so they did talk about in the live stream. I'll admit I didn't pay as much attention to it, just because, I'm not as intimately involved in that sort of thing. However, then we have the Torrent. The Torrent is the deep space transport, and it's got a smaller fleet hangar, so only 37,500 cubic meters fleet hangar, so smaller than your Ocketers and your Impels and Bustards. But it's got a 90,000 cubic meter infrastructure hold, which is enormous. And that's just as a hauler. Let's talk about what else it can do. So transport ships gives you bonuses to fleet hangar capacity and shield resistances. That's pretty standard for what DSTs do. It's also got a 25% bonus to missile damage for Upwell Hauler skill level, which you'll have at 5 in order to fly this thing. +2 warp core strength, which is standard. Bonuses to overheating various modules, which is also standard. But yeah, it's got 3 missile hard points with 4 high slots, 6 mid slots, 3 low slots, and of course 2 rigs because it is a Tech 2 ship. But this thing is beefy.
This is it's cool. I don't know a ton about hauling, but all of a sudden I want to know more about hauling because these ships seem really fun.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, no range bonus. So, at first I was like, oh my gosh, I want to build a Torrent that can run C3 wormhole sites. But without a range bonus, I think that's going to be tricky. But I still might try it for the lulz.
Well, and the other thing that I just remembered as we're talking is that I think one of the other intents of these is if, depending on how the resource rating goes with the skyhooks, you bring one of these to put all of the stuff you've raided out of the Skyhook into it, and it's also not a just worthless ship in your fleet. It can also shoot stuff. So
Absolutely.
kind of
Yeah.
like a pirate freighter loot ship. It sounds super fun.
Yeah, no, and I think that is absolutely part of the intended gameplay with these. I think you're absolutely right about that. So yeah, those are the three kind of normal hauler sized, which again, people going in and out of wormholes I pay the most attention to, but the one that's perhaps garnered the most attention is the Avalanche, which is the Upwell Freighter. So, just to give you a quick rundown, 10% bonus to missile damage per freighter skill level, 10% bonus to infrastructure hold capacity, and 20% bonus to auto-targeting missile damage, which is something that's a little bit different. But beyond all that, so it can kick out some DPS. I think that there was some math done that with auto targeting rapid heavies, or maybe auto targeting torps, it was putting out well over 1,000 DPS
Yeah,
as a
yep, that's what I
freighter.
saw as well.
So that's one thing, but bear in mind that a lot of that involves using auto targeting missiles, which really have kind of been sort of a meme in Eve for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, they auto target friend or foe, right? So
Well, they used to be called friend or foe missiles. So what they do is basically anything that's red boxing you, I think, or has aggressed you, it
okay.
will target the closest of those available targets. So yeah, it can kick out some nutty damage, but there's some severe limitations on how that damage is applied as well. So there was a lot of discussion about okay, what's this going to mean for high set ganking, and in reality, just like everything else, when it comes to high set ganking, it's just a numbers game. Perhaps
Right.
perhaps a larger impact on that is the fact that you can fit stuff to this freighter.
Yeah.
So one of the things in the roll bonus here is 90% reduction in capital flex shield hardener capacitor activation cost. So yeah, you can, and do we have the, I don't know that I have the slot layout pulled out in front of me. It's not super important other than to say, well, it's got 6 high slots. Here we go. 6 high slots, 3 mid slots, 3 low
Reload. Yeah.
slots. And so you can fit a tank on this thing, which is perhaps the most notable part of it. Now, not a ton of tank, but I mean, if you're flying this thing around with a couple of hardeners and a head full of Nirvana implants, then all of a sudden your EHP is going to be pretty darn beefy.
Yeah, I was trying to find. I saw someone have EHP numbers, and now I can't track that down. I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, so between the tank and the ability to project a decent amount of damage, there's been a lot of discussion and some no small amount of controversy around the Avalanche, because it's also got a 265,000 cubic meter cargo hold, and I believe this is a 3 million cubic meter infrastructure hold. So positively massive. And it's not necessarily the ganking implications that people are concerned about with these ships. It's the fact that we already have freighters, deep space transports, and blockade runners, and Tech 1 haulers. And are those going to matter anymore? Is what a lot of people are asking.
Yeah, are these gonna just catch a nerf later on? Are other ships, existing ships, gonna get some kind of buff? Are these gonna be really hard to get ships? They said the cost is low, but so I assume not.
Yeah, so the construction cost is not really far off their existing counterparts, and it's not going to be, it's not loyalty points for the blueprints or anything like that. The Upwell NPC stations are going to sell these blueprint originals. Obviously, you have to invent the blockade runner and the DST, but yeah, you can buy these blueprints just like you could any other, normal ship blueprint.
Okay, yeah. So I would definitely be looking out for what makes you need to fly any of the other ships at this point.
Yeah, and I have heard, I was watching Oz's stream yesterday, which I think you might talk a little bit more about him in a little bit, but I was watching his stream yesterday, and he's on the CSM, and he came right out and said that he thinks the Avalanche is too powerful, and that it will make the other freighters obsolete. And if you check the Vegeta market prices, the prices on deep space transports and blockade runners are already dropping.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, TBD if this will catch a nerf before the release, but there's a lot of discussion happening around it right now. Like I said, particularly the Avalanche. I'm most interested in the Torrent and the Deluge, but we'll see.
Yeah. And just for the fitting, I found for the Avalanche, someone has doing 400 DPS with auto targeting missiles, and then 343,000 EHP.
That's a big boy.
Yeah.
I mean, just being able to fit a damage control onto a freighter
Yeah,
is
no,
kind of
it's
bazonkers.
we talked about how many, in the first episode, how many bonuses and numbers you get on that, and then when you just increase the base number of a huge ship by that much, yeah, it's a lot of value.
Because a freighter has 50,000 structure hit points.
Yeah.
So yeah, speaking of, so yeah, we'll see what happens with this. Speaking of market changes, in anticipation of Equinox, there's another one that I also was clued into watching Oz's stream yesterday, and that is moon materials are already starting to take a hit. There's the speculation market has kind of dried up on that right now. People are still producing them, obviously, and selling them, but you don't have, I don't think, as much of the, buying and selling just between traders that would normally happen. So those prices are starting to fall because that demand is starting to get clipped. And so we'll see how far it falls, but yeah, not a great time to invest in moon minerals, I would say.
Yeah, we'll see if it was all paranoia or if the market drops out with all the newfound moon mining going on.
Well, I think for some things, especially low quality moons, I think the bottom will absolutely drop out.
Yeah.
Now the demand for those things might increase commensurately. We might, T3 ships are potentially going to see a drop in price, and some other stuff that involves a lot of that moon goo, or T2 ships rather.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I talked a lot about Oz, which seems like a really good segue to your content of the week, content you enjoyed this week.
Yeah, so content I enjoyed this week. There's been a lot of challenges going on that I'm either noticing or newfound ones of people alpha to omega or, self-imposed challenges. We talked about Corvette to Cinnable last week, but so I was going back and tracking through those in Oz underscore Eve. Huge financial guy in Eve and in real life is my understanding, but he has tons of videos about how Eve economy works, how to do trading, and he has this series of alpha to omega only from station trading. So that's identifying items with good margins and how to trade on those items and how to recover if it doesn't work out so well. So I've been really watching those videos and enjoying them because the market aspect is always something I've really respected about Eve and never been brave or patient enough to actually try out. So this one, I basically gave one of my side characters some seed ISK to start out, like 15 million, and I'm just kind of seeing where I go with it. And so it's pretty low risk, and I'm learning how to do some market stuff, and hopefully I can translate that into investing a larger amount of ISK and making even more money because it's 30 minutes a day maybe, and it just makes ISK for you in the background. So yeah, I've been really liking his stuff. With that new information, please do not go watch his videos and steal all of my margins because I need those. But yeah, that's been really good. And then the only other content I'm going to highlight for this week, go to your audio settings in Eve and check the override dynamic music with classic Eve music button, because the classic Eve music are all bangers. And this is just a huge nostalgia bomb for me. So that's the other content I've really been enjoying is sitting in my station and listening to the old Eve music.
Yeah, I've been doing that as well, actually. Somebody, I think, on Discord pointed out that was an option. I was like, really? I can go back to this music that I occupied so much of my life, 15, 16 years ago? So, yeah, and just turn your sound on in general. The meme is always that Eve has sound, and I am very guilty of that as well. But spending time in wormholes will it highly incentivizes turning your sound back on.
Yes.
To hear splashes and that sort of thing. But yeah, Eve, they've done so much iteration on the audio in this game, and it's amazing stuff. So, and yeah, I've been watching a fair bit of Oz's stuff as well, as I hinted to a minute ago, and yeah, embarking on a little bit of trade too, because it's one of the things that makes Eve truly unique is the market, the huge majority of the market, it's all players, which
Yep.
you just don't get in other games, not to this
Yep.
scale. So my content, and actually, I just got an email back from my favorite content of the week, and that is Mike Azaria, who runs something called the Magic School Bus. And what he does, and you can, as far as actual content, you can find a lot of videos and interviews with him online, and I highly recommend watching those. But my favorite, and one that I watched after I ran into him last night, is he gave a talk at FanFest in 2022 about longevity in games, and it's very funny. But it also talks a lot about why he's doing what he's doing. So what Mike does, and Mike is his real first name too, so there won't be any confusion there. But what Mike does is he takes a bowhead, which, if you're not familiar, is a variety of freighter that it specializes in carrying around fitted ships. He takes this bowhead and he drives it to all the career agent systems in New Eden, and it is full of frigates, destroyers, and cruisers. And when he arrives in a system and docks at the career agent station, he announces in local that the Magic School Bus has arrived, and that if a character is less than 30 days old, all they need to do is dock at the station and say something in local, and he will hand them a free ship. And this has been going on for years. And Eve being Eve, a lot of people assume that it's a scam.
That's what I would assume for sure.
Exactly. And so I wanted to highlight this because it really isn't. This guy's been around for a long time. He's been on the CSM many times. He's on the CSM now, in fact, I believe. But no, this guy is legit. So if you see Mike Azaria of the Scope in a career agent system, he really is handing out ships. There really is no catch. You really do just have to say something in local. And this will tie into, I've been working on a bit of my own challenge project, if you will. And one of the characters on that account was running career missions. And Mike stopped by, and I had this tune speak up in local, and he handed me a ship. It was a very well fit Rifter, metaphor guns and metaphor shield extenders, and a
Wow.
hold full of faction ammo for those autocannons. It's a really nicely done ship, and I guess he does it based on the age of the character. So if you're less than a week old, it gives you a frigate. A week to 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, it gives you a destroyer, and then maybe 2 weeks to a month old, he gives you a fit cruiser. So for those of us who have been playing a long time, that's not much, but to a new bro, that's huge.
Yeah. No, I definitely remember when I first started out, just like looking at the market price of a thorax. I'm like, how on God's green earth does anybody fly that ship? And so getting that kind of boost early is great, and lets people do the stuff they want to do earlier. So that's awesome too.
Well, and even with the money that you get from career missions, that Rifter fit um, market value is about 4 million isk, and he also does it based on what region you're in. This tune's in Minotaur space, but yeah, so that Rifter was about a 4 million isk fit, and the career agents are great. They give I ended up netting something like 11 to 12 million per tune, but having a ship that can do, for a new bro, high-end PvE content, you can run all the high sec anomalies, I'm sure, in that ship. That's a huge leg up. So Mike Azaria, Magic School Bus. If you're new and you see him in local, um, it's real, it's legit. If you're not new, and I did accept a ship, and then I immediately logged off. I had to log off that tune because it's an alpha. Logged on to Crovan and sent Mike a donation to help keep the Magic School Bus going. So I'll spell out his IGN in the description of this video. So yeah, if you're so inclined, he always accepts donations because those ships he's fitting them nicely. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah,
That's
and
cool.
then
I look forward to that.
yeah, and I reached out to him too. I sent him an email. I explained kind of the situation, and I said, hey, the I'm a host of a podcast, and I'd love to potentially talk to you sometime. And he seemed receptive to that. So we'll see if we can get that set up. He's in Western Canada, so he's actually really close to my time zone, which is
Yeah.
which will make that a little bit easier probably. So moving on to plans, and I think this segues nicely into my plans going forward. And I've actually dropped the first video of this already, which is I am taking an alpha character, or an alpha account, I should say, into um, Angel's Pirate Insurgency. I picked Angels because one, I've already got a couple of tunes in Garista's Insurgency. I kind of wanted to see what Angel's Insurgency was like, and two, it would make it less tempting for me to indirectly help myself by,
Right.
going to where I know noir pilots are. And
Yeah,
that sort of
insider info.
exactly. So I'm isolating myself on this account from uh, all of my other accounts. I might make an exception and send this character some skins to use on his ships, not
Well,
to sell,
obviously.
but just to have something pretty to look at. So I've actually filmed for the second video and for part of the third, and this is heavily inspired by the Corvette to Cinnaball challenge that we covered last week. So the idea is it's not nearly as hardcore as Corvette to Cinnaball. I'm allowing myself to use the market and career agents and login rewards and all that fun stuff. So I'm not going nearly as hardcore as Bill Dinga Cinnaball is, but which is an amazing name.
That is a great name.
But yeah, so we're going to see how that goes. And I'm a few days into it at this point, and I've already redeemed my first set of loyalty point rewards. And so if you want to see how I acquired those rewards and what I got for them and how I plan to make money on that character, I'm not going to do it as an alpha to omega challenge because I've just got too many demands on my Eve time, especially if we end up going on contract. I would have to kind of set it aside. But I can give kind of some rough math to see if it would be feasible to go alpha to omega like this. But yeah, I'm debating if I should use that Rifter that I was given. Part of me says no because it's a no outside help kind of thing, but at the same time, it's a resource that a real new bro alpha would have access to. So I don't know. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to use that Rifter that Mike gave us. I might just to help promote Magic School Bus a little bit more, but we'll see. So that's my plans for content and both in a meta and real in-game sense going forward. What about you, Tharus? What do you got going?
So I think I'm going to be putting out either a Don't Panic video or we'll have it for the next episode. I haven't decided, but Don't Panic, we mentioned in the first episode, was a series on the original podcast where we would go over basically some sort of system or content to do and a very intro guide to it. And so I think the first official iteration of that I'm going to do is a like UI and overview setting to prepare someone for their first fleet op. There was an op that I was in, I think after we recorded last week, and I was sitting in station waiting for the call to undock or whatever, and I realized that one, my overview was still kind of messed up, and two, I was like, man, I haven't actually been in a big scale fleet in a long time. Do I remember how to do this? So I want to go over getting someone set up so that they can see everything they need to see in a fleet and go over the basic fleet commands. And so they are way more comfortable doing their first fleet op. You're still going to be nervous, but way more comfortable doing it, and so that you enjoy it going forward. Long story short, it is a very complicated and precise game of Simon Says. But it is also some of the best content in Eve. So I want to make sure everyone has the tools they need to go out and do that and not be afraid of it.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah, and we can talk about whether or not you decide you want to do that as a standalone or part of the drone bay. I think it would do really well as a standalone, honestly.
I think so, yeah.
But there's no reason we couldn't do kind of a shorter version on our on the show as well. So
yeah.
All right. Well, those are our plans. So let's move on to the thing of the week. It's been modules of the week so far. This week, we are talking about a ship, and I will ask in the form of a question. I've been watching the Eve FanFest 2023 playlist, which still is fantastic, and it's helping me catch up a lot and helping me feel nostalgic because it was the 20th anniversary. So they were talking about a lot of stuff that Eve boomers could get into. But one of the more interesting videos in that was they broke down 20 years worth of data about the game. And part of that is they have looked into the ship stats, how often they're flown, how many are built, how many get put on the market, all that sort of stuff, and how many get destroyed, I think. But in most of those categories, one ship dominated. It is the most logged into, it is the most switched to, it is the most sold on the market, and I believe it is the most produced. It might be the most destroyed, but I'm not positive on that one. So, listeners, I will give you a few seconds to think, and you can answer in the form of a postcard in the comments section what you think that ship is, and don't cheat.
No hanging chads.
All right, I think that's enough dead air. I'm allergic to dead air as a as a radio guy, but the answer is the Humble Venture, which surprised me. It surprised me, but it shouldn't have, I suppose, because when they were talking about most logged into ship, my first thought was the Ibis,
Yeah.
the Caldari noob frigate.
Yeah,
But
for all the Jita alts.
exactly. But, and I guess that probably is pretty high up there. But the Venture is not racially locked. Everyone who does the career agents gets 2 if you do all of them.
Okay.
And they're good. They're good at what they do. I to share another Eve Boomer moment, when I first started the game, and Tharus, I think when you did too. Yeah, for sure when you did too. Each race had their quote unquote mining frigate, and for the Galente, it was the Navitas.
Navitas, yeah.
And there was no such thing as an ore hold. You had to mine and toss it out into either fly back to station 1,000,000,000 times, or toss it out into a jettison container and have somebody come pick it up in a hauler for you, or go back and pick it up once the container was full. Hope nobody flipped your can.
Yeah, hope nobody you didn't want to try to take it.
Yeah, exactly. So the Venture is such a massive quality of life improvement for the new player experience in Eve, and I think I've talked about it every episode how much better I think the new player experience has gotten. And looking at some of that data and thinking about it made me realize just what a massive quality of life increase the Venture is. Have you done much Venture piloting, Theris?
Not a lot, though. With our move to the reef, I did make sure Tharus's skills were up enough so that he could go huff gas whenever the opportunity allowed, because that's just free money waiting out there. So
it's good ISK. Really good ISK. So yeah, the Humble Venture. I thought it was appropriate to highlight a ship that literally everybody in the game has access to. If you roll a new character, one thing I've run into, I also love Eve's recover account feature, which is something that did not exist a long time ago. But basically, you put in the email address, and if you use the same email address for all your accounts, it will tell you the username for all your accounts.
Okay.
So you can go back and recover every account you've ever made, provided you remember what email address you used and still have access to said email address. Right. So I've been reactivating all these old accounts, and it's funny to me to see how the NPE, the new player experience, has evolved in terms of how many skill points you start with and what actual skills you start with. Because obviously my characters that were created before the Venture don't have mining frigate, because that wasn't a thing. But a lot of them started with 700,000 plus skill points, whereas now you start with like 375 or 380. But you don't have to buy nearly as many skills as you're going through that alpha experience. So
yeah, and kind of related to that, just reminded me, whenever you make a character now, you don't have to look at a list of 5 or 6 attributes in the game and say, what the heck are these, and make a seemingly incredibly important decision about where you're sticking those attributes, right? It just kind of, these are your attributes, enjoy life. So
yeah, if you've ever wondered why so many old characters are Caldari, well, I guess specifically the oh gosh, what's the Caldari? ethnicity that's vaguely Japanese in appearance. It's what my combat alt is, and the reason for
Yeah,
that,
mine too.
the reason for that was back then, each ethnicity for each major empire had different statistics, and this was before remapping, or maybe remapping had been introduced, but it wasn't like it is now where you get one a year. And so what you chose mattered in an in-game way.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's another Eve Boomer moment. Well, I think that just about brings us to the end of our topic list this week. I did have one more note on here, which was giveaways. We are not, as of recording, Eve partners, so we don't get the free skins from CCP to give away. However, I have a decent skin collection going, and Tharus, you've been also acquiring some of the new police skins or re-released police skins.
Yep.
And so there's a distinct possibility that in the future we'll be giving some of those away. I thought about doing it this week, but I neglected to do the legwork to determine how best to do like parsing of YouTube comments and all that sort of fun stuff. And so hopefully next week I will have that squared away and we can start doing some giveaways, because who doesn't like giveaways and who doesn't like police skins? And oh, one more thing related to police skins.
What's that?
There's a new one. There was one that was seeded that I actually specifically mentioned in episode 1 that I was like, oh, it's not in the game. Where is it? The Catalyst Navy issue Federal Police skin.
Ah, yes.
And if we're using any of my station footage, it's what you've been looking at while the show's going on. It's finally here. I love it. It was a Twitch drop. The Twitch drop for that has ended, but you can pick one up in Jita for 50 something million-esque as of recording.
Yeah. Which it'll only go up. So if you don't have one and you want it, I would recommend sooner rather than later.
And maybe we'll give one away next week, because I have a
few.
Well, Tharus, anything else to add before we say adieu to the good people for this episode?
No, along that note, just remember to go watch the Twitch streams for the free stuff that's coming out.
They're still doing drops. They were doing battle cruiser skins last. I think there was a Ferox and a Brutix and maybe something else.
A Cyclone.
Cyclone. Oh, okay. Well, I missed that one, I think, so I'm gonna have to log the Jita alt on once we're done with this. So also, as always, the best way to help small channels like ours is to like the video and subscribe, and frankly, watch to this point in the video. As always, Noir is in an active phase of recruitment. I will put a link to our Discord in the description of the video down below. I will also put links to all of the content that we referenced in this episode. If you want to chat in-game, you can go to cafe space noir dot. That is Noir's in-game channel. We are recruiting experienced PvPers for the main corp. We are also recruiting less experienced PvPers for Noir Academy. And actually, it really warmed my heart yesterday when I looked in the Discord and saw someone who had come to talk about joining Noir Academy by watching our videos. So that means a lot. With all that said, until next time, good hunting.